Joining us on the phones right now. It's always a pleasure to visit with the senior senator from the great state of Texas, U.S. Senator John Cornyn. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Chad. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. It is, well, there's always something going on. There's always something in the news and something going on in Washington, D.C. But first, what I want to get to is an event that was held yesterday. And you're actually part of this group that is highlighting expanded scholarships for veterans.
Yeah, this is part of the GI Bill of Rights, something my dad took advantage of after World War II as part of the Greatest Generation. But each generation, we've tried to update it. For example, the post 9/11 Bill of Rights, GI Bill of Rights, to make it transferable to family members if the veteran himself or herself wasn't going to use it. And what we announced yesterday was the expansion of the GI Bill to cover more STEM degrees, science, technology, engineering, and math degrees. And we had some employers there, including NASA and Dell Computer, that talked about how good it is to have veterans who have gone back to school on the GI Bill and studied in these STEM areas, how much better prepared they are than perhaps the average person who goes immediately from high school to college because of their experience and their maturity and their resilience. And so just at the, I know this is heresy in Lubbock, but just talking about Austin, President Findus said it opened up 25 different fields of study to veterans that had not previously been available. So that's, I'm sure, the same in Red Raider land in Lubbock and at all of our Texas universities, and I think good news for our veterans.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's shift the focus a little bit to things that may or may not happen in Washington, D.C. For the rest of the year. Senator, you look at what happened in El Paso and what happened in Dayton, and you still have talk about what, if anything, needs to be done here in the U.S. Regarding guns or gun laws or background checks. The president has seemed open to some type of expanded background checks or stronger background checks. What does he convey to you? Because it seems like everyone's confused as to what the president is open to and to really what Congress is open to as well.
Well, you know, we've done quite a bit on background checks following the Sutherland Springs shooting outside of San Antonio, when we found out that this former U.S. Air Force veteran had multiple convictions for domestic violence, and he'd been institutionalized for mental health issues. He should never, under existing law, have been able to get a gun because he would have failed a background check, but the Air Force did not upload the information into the FBI system. We've now addressed that, and they've seen a 400% increase in the number of pieces of data, people with disqualifications entered into the background check system. But each one of these shootings, tragically, is a little bit different. And, of course, in neither one of these shootings was there a failure to pass a background check. Both of them did. Obviously, mental health crises are a huge problem, and we've tried to figure ways to help people with mental health crisis so their family members get the help they need and the supervision from a court in order to keep them from being a danger to themselves and others. But, you know, if we knew how to pass a law to prevent crime, we would have already done that.
Yeah, a lot of crime is illegal already.
Absolutely. All of this is illegal. All of this is criminal conduct. So here's my red line. I don't see it solving any problem to prevent law-abiding citizens from keeping and bearing arms as guaranteed by the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. law-abiding people are not the problem. So that's when I see some of these alleged proposals or solutions which wouldn't solve any problems, which do nothing but infringe on the rights of law-abiding citizens. That, to me, is a red line. So I'm happy to talk about other ideas as long as we have due process of law. For example, these so-called red flag laws, revisiting whether some of these acts constitute domestic terrorism and whether that ought to be a specifically defined crime under federal law. I'm happy to look at all that. But I think we have yet to arrive at consensus on what that solution might be.
Would there have, from what you've seen, Senator, let's just say we would have had red flag laws and either here in Texas or, a national red flag law, whatever it may be, would that have prevented either of these shootings?
Well, as you know, Chad, we don't have a national red flag law. I think there's 17 states, if I'm not mistaken,
right,
have their own version of red flag laws. And I don't know any red flag law that would have prevented the El Paso shooting. By the time the shooter posted his manifesto on Facebook, I think it was about 20 minutes before he went to the Walmart. So there really wasn't enough time to react. The situation is very different, as I understand, with the Dayton shooter, who was sending off signals right and left, posting all sorts of radical ideology on social media, identifying with Antifa, this anarchist group that really is a form of domestic terrorism. So if there are ways to get the social media companies to help work with law enforcement, like they do on child pornography, like they do on foreign terrorism, I think maybe that would be a productive way to area to look at, because some of these people will send off red flags in a way that we can get help to them. So they're not a danger to either themselves or the public.
Senator, there's been some talk about labeling Antifa a domestic terror organization. Are you in favor of that?
Well, they certainly seem to be terrorists, and they are certainly domestic. I've heard some commentary, Chad, that they really are not an organized group. They are, as I understand from the FBI director and others, they are people who are essentially anarchists, which I guess means they're not part of a group, but they certainly have a radical ideology. And in this case, it looks like may have inspired this shooter in Dayton to commit his heinous crime. So I think that's an area we need to look at more closely.
Senator, taking a look at I always like to get your opinion on what the 2020 Democrats are saying. When you take a look at what is I guess being said in the 2020 Democrat primary, what do you take away from that? And what do you take away from that when it comes to the future of this country?
Well, Bernie Sanders, a self-described democratic socialist, whatever that is, was the most radical Democrat running in 2016. But now Bernie seems to have become mainstream with Elizabeth Warren in the Democratic Party, that is, with Elizabeth Warren and AOC and others embracing their radical ideas like the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, even Medicare for illegal immigrants. So I think they have moved so far to the left that they're in danger of falling off the cliff. And I think they're helping the president and they're helping Republicans, by contrast, be a better choice in helping us with the election. We're not going to leave it up to our opponents just to disqualify themselves. We're going to have a positive vision for how we can do things in a more constructive way. For example, instead of the Green New Deal, which is more taxes, more regulation, more command and control by the central government over how you run your life, we're going to invest more in research, which will provide innovative solutions to how we improve the environment, and at the same time as provide people low-cost energy, which is going to improve their quality of life and create more jobs.
Senator, before I let you go, I know you're not in charge of this down in Austin, but you were in Austin, and I saw that you had retweeted an article, I guess about an hour ago, about the city's homeless camping issue down there. Any thoughts on that? How's that affecting at least those who you've talked to in Austin? How's that impacting the state's capital?
Well, as I live in Austin now, the People's Republic, formerly from San Antonio, but I have to say, City Council, I think, has made a big mistake allowing camping on city streets and in public areas, and it's been a magnet for a lot of homeless people. What I tweeted there was my respect for a gentleman named Alan Graham, who runs Mobile Loaves and Fishes and actually has a wonderful facility where he encourages homeless people to get clean and from drugs and alcohol, and provides them housing that they need in order to get off the streets. So I suggested that maybe City Council here in Austin ought to call on Alan Graham and get his advice about how to deal with it, because right now, under the status quo, it's a disaster. And I think it's going to be a turnoff for a lot of people who otherwise might come to Austin and spend some money. So I think it's going to be they need to take a look at what Alan has done and get advice from him on how to deal with this homeless situation, because the status quo is not good.
Yeah, I think many would agree with you, Senator. We appreciate your time as always, and we'll visit with you down the road.
Thanks, Chad.
That's U.S. Senator John Cornyn here on the Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.